Accountability Now from Top to Bottom, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Linda Galindo. Today's webinar will last approximately an hour. Stay tuned at the conclusion of the broadcast for an exclusive offer. Before we begin, note there is a question and answer window. It's usually at the top right-hand corner of your screen. It may be labeled as a chat window. You can use that area to submit any questions that you have throughout the presentation, and then we'll either answer those right as they come in. We may hold some for the live Q&A if we have time with Linda at the end of the session, or by email after the session. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webinar. I am in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Linda Galindo. A former radio news anchor, Linda is a recognized author, educator, speaker, and consultant who specializes in accountability and high-performance executive team building. She is the author of several books, including Where Winners Live, The 85% Solution, and The Accountability Experience. Linda is also a faculty member for the Governance Institute and the Institute for Management Studies. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today, Linda.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to this one-hour webinar that addresses the most important topic of our time, accountability. Accountability affects everything, and with little exception, everyone wants it. But let's get real. When push comes to shove, especially in turbulent times, people are fearful about losing their jobs. They're not able to keep up with all the change, and accountability as a concept sounds really scary. So as we go through this PowerPoint presentation and the webinar and the comments that I make, I'm going to ask something of you. If you can have a pen and a piece of paper at hand, I'm going to talk to you about different concepts that might really get to you, affect you. I'd like you to write down the number of the slide that appears in blue at the circle on each of the slides. If I'm talking about something that you say, yes, this absolutely applies to me. And then I will share how getting that data from you to me will be done at the end of the webinar. There's also going to be a few quick online polls. So as we go, I'd like you to register your experience with accountability. Let's get started. Does this visual feel like accountability, or more like what you walk into every day? Did Steve Jobs work like this? Yes, he was a cowboy, a genius. It worked. But some would say it wasn't for everyone. Part of your organizational life can feel like this, and maybe you thrive on it, but it could also be a constant source of stress, and not the good kind of stress. We'd all agree that there are times we wish employees would pull together, or you need them to. Accountability now is the difference between feeling like this a lot of the time, and I know we've all had that sense of urgency, and in some cases it's chronic, or consistently getting more collaboration and engagement. Accountability in a group, a department, a team, or an organizational culture means less of this when it's counterproductive and more of this when you need it. Getting more of this pulling together begins with the invitation I have for you in this webinar, and that is to consider changing your view of accountability by considering its specific meaning. You can engineer a mindset transformation about the specific meaning of accountability to bring the value of it into your organization top to bottom. I'm asking you to try on a new clarifying lens that starts with self-awareness. Why start with self-awareness, or what we call inside-out learning? In a McKinsey & Company article titled, Why Leadership Development Failed, the author cites underestimating mindsets as a key reason for program failure. The McKinsey article affirms what the data I've collected over many years demonstrates. Identifying some of the deepest, below-the-surface thoughts, feelings, assumptions, and beliefs is usually a precondition of behavioral change, one too often shirked in development programs. So I have to start with, how do I look at what my accountability reflection is? Do I look controlling because my mindset is, I can't lose my grip on the business. I'm personally accountable, and only I should make the decisions about everything all the time. To understand and use accountability productively and proactively is to understand accountability as a mindset first. It's very empowering to assess yourself and what you think about accountability. It can be very eye-opening, even transformational. Here's an example. The Wall Street Journal reported that this company fell below earnings in the first quarter of 2013. The CEO would probably consider himself a very accountable person. He's the CEO. But when it came time to answer for the lack of results, his deepest beliefs about accountability surfaced. The Wall Street Journal article quoted the CEO blaming the weather and finger-pointing. He said it was sloppy shipping practices on the part of the e-commerce retailers. If the company had met or exceeded projections, would accountability look different? When a company hits its goals, it's the CEO's success. And if it does not, outside factors are accountable. When it comes to accountability, you have to watch out for what I call the as long as syndrome. That could be hidden from you unless you assess your mindset. The amount of as long as that is hidden from oneself and the organization as a whole prevents the power of accountability from being a competitive advantage, especially when things go wrong. To change this, you have to experience accountability a different way, from the inside out. If you are willing to examine it from the inside out, it can change your mindset and then lets you powerfully answer for your results, good or bad. The amount of as long as in your organization's culture is an accurate predictor of what your internal and external customer will get when things don't go well. If you have a lot of as long as, you're going to get a lot of blaming and excuses instead of accountability now. The as long as syndrome is subtle. It's why our proprietary and validated assessment measures the as long as in the mindset. Like the McKinsey article affirms, mindset can be a huge hidden barrier to a program like accountability training being successful. Maybe you really resonate with this. If you have a lot of as long as in your culture, you will get a lot of reasons and blaming, finger pointing, instead of ownership and solutions. You can find out what gets in your way of your individual, group, team, or organizational accountability with the self-assessment. If there is a willingness to do that, you can immediately begin to address a condition that has gone viral in many organizations. And here's what that condition is: corporate overwhelm. When fear of saying no drives employees to say yes to everything to keep their job, you do not have an accountable work culture. You have an unhealthy, massively stressed out culture. Employees can become so overloaded that they start to do a bad job. No one comes to work to do a bad job. But if saying no is unthinkable, it's not an option, yes is meaningless. Remember mindset? We're not socialized with the tools of saying no. We accommodate, sacrifice, rescue, fix, and save to be liked, to be rewarded as a team player. And we attempt to thrive on a culture of heroics, not accountability. So ask yourself, do I work where saying no is not an option? And here's where we'd like to take a poll. Which one applies? I can never say no, whatever they want, I have to do. Or I'm constantly letting everyone down because no is never an option. Take just a moment and click if either one of these apply.
Linda, we are going to have to skip this poll in the polling form, but people can chat in to their window and put in their A or B, and we'll be able to see that summary there. We had an error with the system here, but we can still get some responses. Here they come in now.
Okay.
So it looks like the bulk actually that are coming in are A's. Oh, we have some both. Neither. We have some people saying neither. But it looks like overwhelmingly we have A.
So I can never say no. Whatever they want, I have to do. And in the neither option, you know, I don't let people down because no is never an option. But really, at the end of the day, what is really established in one's culture where, you know, it is an option to say no, that I'm not going to let someone down because I'm able to go to them and say, can I just stop for a second and ask, in order to be fully accountable, can I tell you that I'm going to say no and I'm going to do something else? So if it's not an option at all to say no, accountability seen a different way can provide people with a tool to be able to say no to their boss, or their boss to be able to make that a tool that also provides them an opportunity to say what they can do. So in that sense and in that context, practical tools in the accountability experience are focused on the very real problem of overcommitment and employees who are overwhelmed. You have to be able to go to the person you've made a commitment to before the deadline and say, I'm sorry, I committed to getting you that information by this date. Can I renegotiate? You have to be able to, in some circumstances, say, no, I can't take that on, and here's what I can do. Will that work for you? Equating saying no or needing to renegotiate an agreement without being accountable prevents the use of very powerful tools to be accountable. First, you have to understand how you think about it, and then the tools do become very useful. So all of the tools that we provide, if we go to our next slide, give us an example of how it is that in an actual situation we have to be able to make a distinction when it really is important to be able to say no and when it is not. You learn that you have to understand your role and all the areas you need to attend to. Here's a great example. In this situation, you don't want anyone saying no to a task that is their role to do. You want 100% individual accountability on the part of everyone in this situation, right? It's life and death. Well, remember mindset. Do you want, we'll do a good job for you, or, well, we'll do a good job for you as long as? What's needed here is all in. 100% personal accountability per individual, or quality could be low or mistakes made if people's mindsets and their thoughts are on something else. In this example, where you are getting surgery, we'd certainly prefer all in, right? Learning how to say no or how to renegotiate is vital. Learning the difference in situations where no really is not an option is equally as important. So to go from mindset about accountability to experience of accountability, the accountability experience provides the clear agreement that demonstrates the value of getting clear so we know what we are saying yes to. So even for people who experience the kind of place that you work where you can say no, this is also a hugely beneficial tool because it really clarifies what you're saying yes to, and the quality of work is even better. Yes is a meaningful and productive way of operating when it really matters, to get very, very clear on what I say yes to. And then there is still that all-important mindset again. In his Forbes article titled, Why Accountability is So Muddled and How to Unmuddle It, Ron Ashkenaz writes, the most significant reason for fuzzy accountability is that people work hard to avoid accountability. Managers are quick to take credit for good results, but are often reluctant to be accountable for failure. To avoid career-limiting consequences Managers go through all sorts of gyrations to diffuse or redirect accountability, such as blaming others, referring to circumstances outside their control, shifting resources to other areas, reorganizing, changing measurements midstream, or any number of other creative deflections. The skill of defining an agreement is really important. Overcommitting and being overwhelmed are killers in today's workplace. Kills employee engagement, kills retention of the best and the brightest, kills health and well-being, kills accountability. So we want to avoid that viral overwhelm and do something to make it work so that we can stop, get clear, and be accountable. In the accountability experience, we learn the value of getting clear so we know what we are saying yes to in the most meaningful way. And the clear agreement becomes the enemy of fuzzy accountability. And it's a fantastic professional development tool. It saves an organization a lot of money. And we know that a lack of accountability costs time and money. But to do something about the lack of accountability, we have to make it personal. Here's a straightforward example. A mindset that says talking about someone behind their back is okay is where personal accountability is really vivid. A mindset that gossiping doesn't help and it's important to talk to rather than about others is just one of many, many accountability behaviors that results from an accountability mindset. And that is the difference between, this is where I say, it's not me, it's them. And you start to feel this very generalized sense of the environment and the culture being loose and people not living up to their personal accountability and going to find solutions. It's sort of as a malaise. It's inert. People just stop moving the culture forward in a dynamic way. Or you can move into a culture like this, where we talk to each other and not about each other, to get clear up front and not plan on finger pointing and blaming if they don't get the results we needed from them in order to do our work. They didn't get us what they promised us in order for us to move forward. And although we'd love everyone else to behave accountably, it has to start in our own mindset to get the results we want. So I'm going to revisit that point. Identifying some of your deepest below-the-surface thoughts and beliefs about accountability is usually a really good first step for behavior change. And that step is too often skipped in development programs. It is uncomfortable, but this tool lets you look. An analogy would be an MRI or an X-ray. What's not obvious to you can be seen, but you know you have pain somewhere. Once you see it, you can decide what you want to do about it. Is my accountability mindset too low? Am I realizing accountability is not what I thought it was? Do I have a lot of as long as? What do I need to do? Yes, it can be uncomfortable. But as my mother would say when the camera came out at family functions, you take how you look. How do you look where responsibility, empowerment, and accountability are concerned? How fuzzy are your agreements? Well, then there's the matter of holding people accountable. This could be where fear is most prevalent and frustrating, even scary. I hear it all the time. Managers don't want to be babysitters. They want people to be accountable. Employees feel like it doesn't matter if you do a great job or not. So I want to invite you to take this poll. Does this happen in your organization? If you work hard and get good results here, you'll be rewarded. If you don't work hard and get mediocre results, you'll also be rewarded. A, yes, this sounds familiar. B, no, this doesn't happen in my organization. Let's take a second and choose and do our quick poll. Very, very common, I hear people in pay-for-performance environments where the accountability seems to be discretionary, or people being held accountable seems to be discretionary, and it's frustrating for them. So go ahead and register your response. We're getting some more, yes, this sounds familiar, than no, this doesn't happen, by probably 2/3 as I look at it, but we'll show you the results in just a few seconds. Just take few more seconds to see.
You can click right on those radio buttons that are on that blue screen there. Okay. Looks like we pretty much have everyone, so I'll go ahead and I'll share the results here, Linda. There you go.
So it's almost clear to see that, you know, for people it's very strongly conditioned. 70% are saying, yes, this happens, 30% doesn't happen in my organization. And it's a great idea when this doesn't happen in my organization that we really look at our best practices of rewarding people for their performance and holding them accountable, and that we have good practices there. And it's a place where we really can continue to affirm what makes that such a good practice in our organization, because many places are really struggling to say, I don't want that to sound familiar. So let's go to the next of the problematic things that happen around accountability in organizations, which is the excuses you hear most often. So in this poll, I'd like you to choose which of these do you hear most often as it relates to accountability, where it starts to get frustrating for you. And you're thinking, I'd really like to hear that a lot less. Which excuse do you hear most often? I wasn't clear. I did not understand. We've tried that. It doesn't work. There's not enough time. Or I hear all of these excuses. Go ahead and choose. The stronger one coming in is that we hear all of these. And it is very, very frustrating. When you get very specific about it, you start to see where people have the most frustration or where they have to get clear about what the accountability is. Take a few more seconds here.
Good. Oh, you have a clear winner here. Yes, let's look at that. There you go.
I hear them all. And probably, as you're listening to this, you have even more things that you hear. We've always done it that way, and it just goes on, and it's frustrating, and then it starts to get very, very stressful. And instead of going to the excuse about why someone didn't produce what they agreed to, you want them to go to accountability. But very helpful to see where people come down. If you hear an excuse at all, which excuse do you hear the most of? And in this combination, looks like, well, the very most is I didn't have enough time, and how the work of accountability and getting people clear starts to de-stress that and gives you some tools to address it, so that isn't what you hear most of the time. Because the excuses can drive us crazy, and that's why you want to start addressing them specifically as you hear them. It's understandable because accountability has been used as a negative for so long that when it comes to holding people accountable, it feels like it's going to be a conflict or very, very scary. So instead of hearing that excuse, I want to put in accountability and hold people accountable in a positive and productive way. This goes back to our mindset again about, do I see holding people accountable is important and productive, and that I can do it in such a way that they grow and develop, or is it that they just want somebody to tell them they're okay and they're doing a good job, but never really hear the truth about how they can improve? Who can we hold accountable for this mistake is often heard in organizations. What really is meant is, who can we blame? One of my clients thinks of it as parental accountability, where both the parent and the child are left feeling not so great after an accountability encounter. Experiencing accountability in a new way can transform its usefulness and power. So if we can all get on the same page about what accountability means, then what I notice is everybody starts to get clear and de-stress rather than accelerate and get more stress when we talk about who is accountable for this. It has a different meaning. Let's go to the definition slide of personal accountability. It's a personal willingness after the fact to answer for the outcomes you produced. So I talked a lot about mindset, and it's really important to understand how people are thinking about personal accountability. It's going to be scary. It's punitive. Someone's going to be punished or blamed. And that has to be validated and understood. I know where that comes from. It's been habituated in how we think about it. But as we shift it to say, well, do I have any as long as? I understand accountability really well when something works. And I can take ownership of that thing working. And it gets fuzzy and muddled when it's not working. And if we moved it to, well, how about if in our culture, in myself, in my group, in my team, in my department, in my organization, I moved accountability's meaning to be common to all of us, a willingness after the fact to answer for these outcomes that are produced. So that means when something doesn't work well, just as it does work well, I can talk about what I did, what I learned, what I would do differently in the future, and how I am accountable for this. So if you took any example that didn't go well and you were involved, and the first thing you went to is, here's what I did, here's what I learned, here's what I do differently going forward, here's how I am accountable, and you can imagine people bringing things that didn't work well to you in that manner, would it be more productive? Would it be less stressful? Would you start not hearing the excuses and the blame? I ran out of time, so here's what I learned, here's what I did, here's what I'll do differently next time, here's how I am accountable for this. No one told me that information. Here's what I learned, here's what I'll do differently next time. Here's how I will handle it so that going forward I'm accountable for it. It becomes much more powerful, and that whole sort of this malaise of a lack of accountability starts to get stronger and clear in people taking ownership. And it's not as scary. But accountability can very much be a learning opportunity if we take out the fault, the blame, and the guilt. It's very personal. So one of my clients put it very well as we've worked with them over time, and it is in the culture. She said to me, individual personal accountability leaves me in the driver's seat, and it doesn't make other people responsible for my shortcomings or mistakes. More importantly, it doesn't put another person in the position of having to exercise this parental accountability with me. Where individual personal accountability is lacking, just like in the choice to use your device while you're driving. You can use it, you don't have to, it could be against the law. It may not be against the law, but that individual choice of personal accountability, when it's lacking and someone is not willing to be responsible for his or her actions going into something, then parental or legal accountability becomes necessary. What frees us up from the need for the heavy-handed version of accountability is high levels of individual personal accountability. So you're probably getting the sense that if in your organization you don't experience, if I do my job, I get rewarded, if I don't do my job, I get rewarded, you know that if you continue to grow personal accountability so that people see that their reward is relative to their accountability and doing a good job and answering for it, you need less and less micromanagement, management, and it's more an environment of coaching and mentoring. So you can never go wrong in growing more and more levels of personal accountability, because then people start to take ownership of what isn't working rather than saying, I'll start being more accountable when they start giving me what I need. So every single day in 100 ways, we're, as individuals, making a choice to be personally accountable. And this particular scenario of using a device while you're in your car, whether it's against the law or just not a good idea, is a great example of saying, regardless, even if no one catches me, I am accountable. If I'm speeding and no one catches me, I'm accountable for speeding. If I'm talking behind someone's back rather than taking the problem to them, I am still accountable. What it then becomes is a mindset, and it is a choice. and then we're not surprised about the outcomes we get in the work we're doing. So just elevating this to a level of accountability being a choice. I'm going to answer for the results I produce, and the choices I can make excuses and blame, and maybe that will fly. Or the choice is maybe I can get clear up front with people and ask what's expected and set the environment so that if a mistake is made, I can go and be the owner of what I did and what I learned. It's a very different idea and concept in terms of how individuals behave and coach each other to behave so things are working better. So to have accountability now, you have to make it individual and personal. That's my premise. You start with yourself and your own mindset. You really have to tell the truth about whether you think, in some cases, I'm the exception because I'm the boss, or my boss thinks they are the exception, and that this is not a say-do environment. It is, as long as I do what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm the person in position of authority, I don't have to model this. A lot of times you'll see people think they're the exception when they don't understand that you cannot mandate accountability. You can't say, you will be more accountable. You have to demonstrate being accountable. So the higher up you go in an organization, the less wiggle room there is for excusing and blaming, because then that sets the tone. The minute something's going wrong and you see ownership at the leadership level, the leaders reflect and they say, is there anything I've done in my role that has contributed to this not working, and start with themselves. Then you start to see a really strong, robust organization versus a leader who goes to a training and then says, okay, I have great ideas for everybody else. And everybody else, of course, as you can see in this little cartoon, the individuals are just, oh my goodness, have you been to a training? Now you're going to give us forms and you're going to make us read a book and it's going to be about us, and it just doesn't get any kind of traction. But really very powerfully, and in my experience of this concept and applying it to myself and in my work, it is when I internalize it and I start to see that if I live what I expect of others, of course, by example, they come along. And it is always challenging to do that. Do I think about accountability in terms of how other people need to behave because I know what I'm doing and I'll be fine? It doesn't apply to me. And do I have any of that as long as mindset? So when we get very excited about a concept because we start to live it and it's lowering our stress and it's helping us be more productive, and we use the clear agreement form and we kind of recognize our mindset and where it's been problematic, yeah, we get enthusiastic and we want to pass it on to others. And that's very powerful when, first and foremost, we see in ourselves where we struggled with it. So you've got to wonder if this is so powerful and such a fantastic competitive advantage where instead of a company excusing or blaming, they're using the tools of accountability to go to the next step, then why isn't everybody rushing with the tools you see to make this happen in their organization? Well, it's about tooling up, being productive, and asking yourself, so tool is one thing, but how do I really influence accountability? What would I really have to do? You know, I could learn new words and definitions and terms and the sheets and the clear agreement, but it then comes back down to these influential pieces in your own mindset. Individual and collective, as a group of people, making a commitment to achieve clarity before beginning. So just like, can I say no in this environment? You know, I want to be able to say yes and own it fully. So can I raise my hand in a group and say, I'm not clear and I'd like to get clear? So individually and collectively, that's something we're doing. Or the second thing, that I make an agreement that no meetings after the meeting. That as part of accountability, I'm going to take ownership for raising my own hand in a meeting rather than go talk about it in the hallway to say, do you think what they meant was? And that's pretty tough in accountability because I'll say to people, you've got to decide if you're willing to be clear for yourself when you're not clear, rather than take it outside in the parking lot or the stairwell and have a meeting after the meeting, that either says, I don't agree with any of that, and yet they said nothing in the room, or they weren't clear and didn't raise their own hand. And sometimes I'll be in these meetings with individuals, and I'll be listening just like they're listening to their boss, and no one asks a question. No one asks a clarifying question. And even to me, what was said in terms of what's expected wasn't clear. And when I asked the group, why was there no clarification if you weren't clear, raising your hand, and someone will say, well, 2 years ago, someone raised their hand and asked a clarifying question, and they went in this room, and they never came out. It's like asking clarifying questions is a challenge or an attack. It's an environment, which is the opposite of a culture in which accountability is very valued. The mindset of that is, the reason I'm asking this question is so that I can be clear and own this fully. And then you start to see that happening, but people have this history and this fear because of what they've seen happen in the past. And in some cases, they never actually even experienced it. They just tell the story of it over and over. But some one person getting very clear about where they are with accountability and saying, I encourage you. I know that's happened in the past. We have to build trust again. Would you be willing to get very clear with me and ask your questions? And I'll answer them, and I'll be a resource for you. Well, when you have tools like the clear agreement, where we're all agreeing it's really okay, let's get clear on this, let's get clear on this, people start to learn what those questions are that they need to ask, and they have an actual tool to do it, and they stop relying on their historical fear to bring that forward, because here we are, and we want to make clear, for one reason and one reason only. I want to own this fully, and I want to do a really good job. So it's shifting a little bit and doing it a little bit different because I want to influence it. That's where the mindset starts. And it's an individual collective agreement with each other, not to rescue, fix, and save. So if I can keep it to that and say I want to keep furthering accountability, my mindset is an awareness that everyone has 100% personal accountability available to them. So if I took the assessment and I said, well, so where is mine? I think I'm a very accountable person, but there's stuff hidden from people. And when they discover it, they say, oh, that's really helpful to see. Even the most accountable people I start out with who say, I'm the CEO, or I'm the top surgeon, or I've been the head of this department for years, they're shocked to discover a blind spot around accountability. And when they discover it and they're willing to be open about it, they know what to do. And the first thing is get very clear about what their role is in bringing it out in other people. And the other thing we have to clarify as we go through understanding accountability a new way is that empowerment is part of accountability. I empower myself with accountability. It's very, very difficult to have a person, in fact, it's impossible, to have a person who has a high level of personal empowerment, but they're not accountable. That doesn't make any sense. So the more you grow personal accountability, the more self-empowerment individuals begin to grow. And we have to get the confusion between empowerment and authority clarified. You can give authority. You cannot give empowerment. You can't empower someone to be more accountable. You can create an environment with the tools and demonstrating the skills to have them come up to being more personally accountable. And those individuals are very personally empowered. So if I make that distinction, which is an important component of the accountability training, then people understand what questions to ask, what authority do I have. But let's remember, there's a lot of people who tell me, I don't want my authority to be clear, because then they'll give it to me. I mean, I will have to produce, and I'll have to be accountable. So really, there are people who are very aware they work very hard to keep accountability confused. So if it's hard, why would we go for it? Well, maybe the answer will be enough to make you an accountability champion. Would your work life improve if the people around you were more accountable? When I ask this in large audiences, every hand goes up. Yes, I want my kids to be more accountable. I want the government to be more accountable. I want my boss to be more, I want everyone to be more accountable. Well, how would everything improve? You really have to look at, well, what do I mean by that? What gets better if everything around me, everyone around me, is more accountable? How does that get better? Well, if you can answer that and see clearly what that is, then the fun starts. And the fun starts because you can get clear about your own definition of success around this for you. That, one of the places that I see amazing growth and development in people and commitment to each other and greatness in a company is that they've defined success. And I will tell you, in this time of change and technology and all the things we have to deal with, in addition to the fact that people skip over self-examination as the start to this because they don't want to challenge their own beliefs and attitudes and they're really committed to being right, they fail to develop their definition of success for themselves. And that's the moving target for a group or a team or an organization that is participating in today's rapidly changing environment and the new forces that are causing change and disruption and all those things. Everyone's got to stop and say, is our commitment to being successful? Yes. Okay, let's define success. If you're willing to do that as an individual and you become totally personally accountable for your success at work, you start to see the resources that are available, no matter what the conditions are, to pull and bring people together to head for that success. Yes, we have goals. And yes, there's going to be conditions that are going to start pushing against those goals. But the people who see themselves as totally accountable for their success, and that then becomes a collective, we're individually and collectively accountable at the same time, all the questions start to change. People are much more flexible and able to stop and get clear, and stop and get clear, to the point of accountability not being a punitive thing, but a really energizing, clarifying, motivating concept in the organization. But if you do it for yourself, you know exactly what it means. And that I have to live by, and do live by, this definition of success for myself. Because as things change, my children grow up, go to school, now they're out of the house. I had a professional definition of success that looked different when they were in my home, and part of my charge and time and day was tending to that. And now they're moving off to college, as probably for many of you that's the case, or aging parents. Well, the same goes in an organization. All of a sudden, maybe the reimbursement plan that we had been working with all this time is significantly different. Maybe the technology has shifted, that it's starting again in some cases. We've got to re-educate ourselves. Well, stop before you do all of that and say, well, what is success for this? So we can be accountable to that. Too many just barrel through and try to hit the next mark, the next goal. They haven't taken into account the level of condition that is going to affect them. And many of my clients say, this whole idea of defining success has really been a game changer for us. We really do stop, and when we need to, we reassess what we need to be doing, given all that's happening. So as I prepare to take your questions, if you would be willing to share with me what resonated by sending in the number in the blue dot you recorded to info@lindagalindo.com, I would really appreciate it, just so I know what really, just like those little mini polls, what really may have resonated around this topic of accountability. I think it's an extraordinary one for our time. We're watching our society in some cases reward not being accountable more than being accountable. And so people are kind of up in the air about it. Well, where do I grab on and take hold so this can be powerful and productive? With that, I thank you very much for letting me set the stage for this, and I'd like to see if you have any questions.
Absolutely. We do have some questions that seem to be typing in, so keep sending those in. And while we wait for those, in the meantime here, let me give you just some quick information about the accountability experience. This workshop provides a comprehensive learning solution that combines self-assessment and classroom training to help individuals measure and develop their commitment to accountability in the workplace. And for joining us today, you do get 25% off discount on that facilitator set. The set includes all of the tools, the guidelines, their scripts for producing an effective either a full day or a half-day workshop. You will get sample participant materials as well as a PowerPoint presentation for the classroom experience. You can use the coupon code. You'll see it at the bottom there, WebinarAE at HRDQstore.com. That's good until April 23rd. We do have free shipping as well as a 30-day risk-free return policy, so take advantage of both of those. Okay, Linda, it looks like we have a lot of chatter coming in, so let's dive right in. Our first question here is from Skylar, and Skylar asks, what if you are being accountable but your manager is not?
Great question, Skylar, and I get it a lot. And very first, I would say to you, when you go to your manager and that frustration is there and the manager is not demonstrating the level of accountability that they expect of you. For example, I'm on time all the time. My manager is always late. I have to sit down with that person and have the conversation around whether I can use that as the way that I'll behave, or is it that I'm just going to choose to behave accountably and not use that person as my excuse. So I would say to that manager, sometimes when I'm here and you're not, first thing in the morning, a call comes in and it's for you, and I'm not sure how I need to handle that. I want to be accountable in terms of what's expected in the response, and so could you give me some insight into what I need to do? Or sometimes when the performance evaluations are due, mine are done, but I know for our department we're still lacking. I need to understand what's the expectation around accountability. Of course, that's just not saying what that manager should do. It's inviting input about how accountability is seen, and that I'd love to help us all be accountable when those timelines come or those phone calls come in, and I'm not actually sure what I understand what to do when that happens, and then just listen for the answer. The most important thing is I just want to point out that I'm experiencing this difference in accountability where I'm accountable and my manager is not, but I don't want to be accusatory, number one. Number two, if you're willing to take the risk and just bring it up as that conversation, give me some feedback or input as a way to look at this, then they become aware. They may not change their behavior. Regardless, never ever use another person as your excuse not to be accountable for yourself, because they're not, I'm not. So you can keep track of your accountability if you need to move on to a more accountable environment when you do your clear agreements or you talk about you're always on time. But really what it's going to demonstrate is no matter what, I choose to be accountable, and then I can ask people about it to give me feedback and input to make them more aware, but it's not going to change their behavior. It might if they're aware enough to say, huh, someone's noticing, but it wasn't an attack. It's just a question.
Mm-hmm. Great. Great. Thank you. And I have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm just sorting through them now. Our next question here is from John. And John asks, when in their culture, when they hold people accountable, sometimes that person then goes to HR or complains, or possibly HR then tells them to kind of back off, and so he's not sure then kind of how to handle that, how to break away from that.
That's really terrific, and that also comes up quite a bit. And here's the thing: when I start to hold people accountable in an environment where that hasn't been the case, or that person's been getting these performance evaluations, you're great, you're great, you're great, and then you get them and they're like, you're not that great. How come people haven't been documenting this? And you're the one who's going to say, okay, come on, enough of this, let's start holding people accountable. And it really is a let's start, because it hasn't been something that's been going on as a way the culture is. My my request would be to go to HR and say, before you do it, here's the situation. I want to make sure it is following the process, but I am going to be holding this person accountable, and they are going to come directly to you, or they are going to go directly to someone they know is going to back them up. They need to back you up, but you can often predict when they're going to be almost blindsided by the person walking in and saying, well, you know, I just got held accountable, and that's never been a problem before, and you've got to give them a heads up. So my suggestion is you go to them and you say, one of the things I'm really working on is holding people accountable in a way that is positive and productive, but regardless, they're still going to have some pushback. And that pushback is probably going to reveal itself as coming to you. And I want to be sure I'm using the process, but I am not going to back down from what they need to be doing. And I want to tell you that I may have contributed this in some way because maybe in the past I let it go. So this is going to be new. So would you please, when this person comes to you, support me and direct them back to me? So I've checked in with you. I know that, you know, I'm not violating any HR process, and I need you to support me, direct them back to me. Whether it's the HR person or your boss or the team, that people just rescue, fix, and save like crazy because they don't want to see somebody, you know, held to what they're expected to do. It's new and different. But it's because I deeply, deeply care that you are successful here. That's why I'm going to go ahead and follow through. That's the mindset. If you don't care about someone, you work around them, or you think it's just too hard, or HR is going to push back, then you start to get that environment where people really don't care that much about each other. They're not committed to the success of each other. So if the first thought is HR won't let me, you got to go to HR. I know that in situations I've been in where I've been told that, I sit down with HR and say, tell me what is the deal. And sometimes people say, well, I never actually went to HR. I just know they're not going to let me, or it's really hard, or the process is really long, or you have to document, or all these reasons, versus saying, what do I really want here? I want this person to be successful, and I want to stop punishing the best performers by working around this individual who I'm not holding accountable. So in some cases, it's press the reset button, and in some cases, it's just facing it and going ahead of it and saying to people, I need your support. It is hard, but I'm very committed to this person being successful, so please support me.
Laura has a great sort of follow-up question to this. She's saying as a manager, when she holds a poor performer accountable, sometimes her team thinks nothing is being done, but actually behind the scenes, a lot is being done, but she's not able to kind of share those details. She needs to maintain a sense of privacy and things like that. Do you have any suggestions as to what she could do as a manager to sort of somehow, I guess, make that a little bit more transparent, or show the team that there is accountability happening?
Yes, and the first word that comes up for me is trust. If someone has made me aware of a situation and they think I'm not doing anything about it, or there's this general sort of talk going on about so-and-so and nothing's happening to so-and-so, and they're still there and they're still doing their job and they're still, but behind the scenes we are in fact in progress. If I even remotely suspect people think nothing's happening, or they're getting a little bit frustrated because the person's still coming to work and still doing their thing, I would bring up the trust question and just say, if you start to feel like you cannot trust me, that something is being taken care of, bring it to me directly, please, because I need to know if I'm not trusted. I need to be trusted that I only communicate what I can. I only communicate those things which the company, you know, keeps that person whole and okay, and their dignity, and the team still functioning. So what I would request of these things that may take longer than people want it to take, and because they don't see something happening, they need to be able to question that, and that's perfectly fine. And if I say the reason I'm not giving communication is because I need to be trusted, that I'm only going to give you what I'm allowed to, but on the other hand, there are ways that I can be proactive in communicating over time what's going on, that's appropriate. So it's going to go both ways. But first and foremost, what people don't know, they're going to make up. and I know that. So I need to say, if you start going there in the conversation, please bring it to me. And if you don't trust me, let's have that conversation. I need to know that because I need to be trusted, and I have to earn that, I understand. But at the end of the day, if you think I'm just saying I can't talk about it as an excuse, you need to come to me and talk to me directly.
Great, great. And as you know, Linda, we have a lot of trainers on the line. So I'm getting sort of the same question here, so I'm just going to sort of kind of paraphrase that for you. But with a lot of trainers on the line, some of them have been asked by management to train on on accountability. Some know that they need to do it. They see it as a need, and they're struggling to get some of the buy-in from people who need to take the training, whether it's excuses about meetings or too much of an interruption, or that this concept maybe feels accusatory, insulting that they're going through this training. Can you help trainers and give them some suggestions on how do they pitch this appropriately to their audience to be able to hold accountability training?
Two parts to that. One part is I just focus on the benefit. When I say to people, do you want the people around you to be more accountable? Would that make your life better? Every hand goes up. Yes. Okay, let's talk about why. Well, because I don't have to babysit. I'm not up at night wondering if things got done. I'm more productive. I don't have to rescue, fix, and save other people's. I mean, they could just do a brief brainstorm. I've had several of my training groups make a little commercial after they've gone through the concept. They say, well, this made everything for me so much better. Okay, well, point to it. It's what's the little commercial that you would put to people? But mostly it's what do commercials do? They sell a benefit. You're going to get something out of this that they're saying they need, that they're saying is something in their environment that would be better if they had it. That's one way. Another way is the assessment. If you take that little booklet that is the assessment and you take that assessment, it starts the conversation. It's like, wow, I'd really like people to think this way. That would be great. Okay, well, let's just take it and have a discussion about it. Does this feel punishing and punitive and awful, or does it feel like, wow, that really kind of started the process of me thinking about this a little differently? It'd be really helpful to know this. And so that, in and of itself, if you just take the assessment, look at what the results are and what it tells you, you see that it doesn't get punitive. And when people say, I just don't have time for this, that may really be true, but they also don't have time for what the lack of accountability produces, running after it, trying to fix it, all those kinds of things. So I would first and foremost say, in all that you read about it, what benefit, what 3 bullet point benefits can you say, this is what it will do? And then as you learn it and train it, you say it absolutely does that. And so the dread of the word and how it's experienced starts to be how you personify it, which is what sells it.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. We are about out of time here for today, so if you do have additional questions, feel free to send those in. Linda will be answering all of your questions by email, so we'll be getting those out to everyone so everyone can see all of the questions that came in and then Linda's responses to those. So feel free to continue to type in any questions that you may have. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today. You have provided a lot of insight.
Thank you very, very much. I enjoyed it very much, and I wish you all a very accountable day.
Wonderful. And we appreciate everyone's time on the line today, and we hope you found today's webinar informative.